Hi, I'm Nick Boris. This is going to be the Defining Life podcast. We're going to start the official podcast in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I'm going to let everybody get online here. So if you're watching the recording and you don't want to hear any banter, go ahead and skip ahead about 10 minutes and we'll start it then. But I'm going to let people hop on. They're here early. That's why we started it. I think we're going to try this out, starting it at 2:50 on Thursdays. Give people 10 minutes to hop on, and we'll just BS, and I can answer a couple of questions if anybody has any questions that they want to ask. Either Define My Day related or anything else, really. I think today's topic is going to be very good. I'm going to try to walk cautiously through it because I know there's some things that I'm going to talk about that kind of get people's backs up a little bit. So I want to make sure I'm handling this in the proper way. So if I go slowly, I apologize if it's too slow for you. But I'm going to do my best to make this valuable, and I look forward to hearing your feedback and your comments and see. Always looking to try to make it better for you. So an interesting thing happened to me today. I've been kind of getting the feeling that I'm getting a little bit smaller, right? So in the fall, I was starting to look like a bowling ball. I felt like it. Everything was fitting so tight, and I just was not comfortable. I did not want to do anything but wear sweatpants. And the couple times I had to go out to like Christmas parties and networking events, I was just not comfortable. Couldn't close my sports coat, oh God, it felt so bad. So, beginning of the year, I kicked off with doing just a detox of carbs and just no carbs whatsoever. And then I just started bringing in the healthy carbs again. The entire time I've been working out 5-6 days a week. Just not eating healthy from probably Halloween through New Year's, New Year's was like the grand finale. And so this week, or maybe even last week, my wife said to me, you look a little smaller, I'm kind of seeing it. And I was looking at myself in the gym today, and it's this phenomenon that happens when you work out and you start losing weight, is that you expect that the big areas are going to go away first. I expect that my gut is going to disappear first, and that's not what happens. I lose it up top first, and so my gut stays the same, or it's actually getting smaller, but the proportions are the same. So my shirts aren't as tight up here, but my look is quite the same, which is discouraging. And that's kind of what happened. If you look at me 2 years ago from one of our first videos with Define My Day, the first press proof we got, man, all this was gone, and I was real thin, and my arms looked good, and that person is under here somewhere. But, I remember going through that process then thinking, man, it doesn't happen in the order that you would want it to. You just hope that, if you work out, your gut just goes... And it doesn't. It doesn't at all. I'm going through that now. But so my big milestone, my weight has not dropped at all over the past 3 weeks or 4 weeks. But my size has. So I'm apparently putting on muscle, even though the scale isn't even telling me that. It has a fat calculator, not telling me that. But this shirt, I got it on sale around Black Friday from Banana Republic, right? It was $11. So I bought a couple of them. And it was an XL. And when I got it, I'm like, I'm going to have a nice shirt to put on. I looked like a sausage in this thing. I mean, it was and my gut was it was just nasty. And I was so discouraged. And I realized, discouraged and then motivated. But I was like, oh my God, it was terrible. And so now I went to go put it on today because I wanted to wear a nice shirt for you. And it fits. So I'm happy. So yeah, it's not, nowhere is it snug. And so apparently I'm losing some weight. Scale's not showing it. Body fat percentage isn't showing it yet. at least from the calculations, but there is a size difference. And I'm noticing, like I'm constantly noticing that I can lift more. I'm using heavier weights. But, it's nice to see an actual physical change. I'm going to have to try on my jeans later and see if those fit. But, it's that example of like, small little things. You don't notice it day to day, but then one day you go to put on your shirt and it fits. Other things going on. So we have, the Super Bowl this week. The last football game that I get to watch with my kid for the season. And we're going to be kind of bummed about it because it's like been our thing. I mean, we literally through the fall like sat and like sometimes I would do some work, but we sat and watched football like all day on Sundays. And it was really nice. It's not the most, I'd like to be more active, but he loves the sport so much. He's so into it and he's telling me things like that I never knew about players that I would have no idea about. But also like he'll go and watch like a Football Life on Amazon Prime and it's pretty cool because he tells me all the facts and things. It's pretty interesting, but I'm going to miss that. So we're going to have to find some new things to do on Sundays, but they're also going to be starting sports pretty soon. They have flag football coming up and soccer and all that stuff's going to be fun. So we're going to get busy again here on the weekends, which is going to change the schedule for those of you that watch the live session on Sunday mornings. That might have to change depending on sports schedule. So, cause we've been trying to do them at noon. We'll see how that goes. I don't know. We'll have to feel that out, but we are going to maintain this 3:00 one on Thursdays, for the foreseeable future. And then I'm also going to do the small little mini sessions in the user group every day, every day that I can. And then we'll do, the recorded podcast videos that go on YouTube. Those get uploaded every Tuesday, and the podcast that goes on, Facebook, or I'm sorry, iTunes podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google, and Spotify. So you'll see those up there on Tuesday mornings also. An interesting topic came up this morning, like the way we talk to ourselves. In the user group, we talked about, like I'll try to be better. I'll try to be organized. I try to work harder. I try to be more focused. The difference between using try and using, I am or I will. And so like I just was thinking about that right now as I'm talking about trying to do a video on Sunday. So feeling that out, but also how I've been handling the videos on Thursdays at 3, right? Like, so my previous mentality was I'll try to do a live video every week. My decision this year has been I will do a live video in the user group every morning, and I will do a live video on Thursdays at 3:00. And that's sort of been the rule going through the month of January. And that mentality of like the difference between I try or I'll try or I will, slight shift in how you talk to yourself, but a big deal in how the end result comes out. So it's pretty cool. I'm kind of liking this. I like the live videos we do. I like the feedback we get. We get some good emails back. And it's practice. It's to get me more comfortable talking, because, while I have always had good feedback from people about what our topics are, it's so uncomfortable for me. This is definitely not like, part of me likes it. And when I get in the groove, I'm okay. But then other parts, I'm like, oh boy, and I don't want to say anything wrong or screw it up or whatever. And, all that good stuff. Melinda, priority number 1, go to the gym and listen to Nick on the treadmill as I listen. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hopefully you experience kind of the same thing that I'm going through right now. I'm finally seeing some results now that I've nailed down my diet, getting off the carbs, getting off the sugar, simple carbs, snacks. And actually in the past few days, so usually when I work out, I want to eat a lot. But in the past few days, I've been trying to go very heavy on the vegetables, decent amount of fruit, but heavy on the vegetables and like quinoa and like complex carbs. And I'm doing really well. Like yesterday, the entire day, the only animal protein I had was a little pork fillet, and that was like probably like 6 ounces maybe. The rest I had all day was spinach and kale and quinoa and like barley and like all that kind of stuff. And by the end of the night, I felt pretty good about going to bed, and I was not hungry and not crazy for anything. So it was a good feeling. So for anybody going through that, you can get there. You can get there. Next week, speaking of which, next week's episode, either in the pre-recorded or in the live, I haven't decided yet. Next week's episode is going to be about burnout. Somebody posted in last week's video that January 19th is National Quitters Day, and I find that very angering. So I want to make sure that we arm you with any tools we can, tactics, tools, tricks, mental games that we can help you play so that you don't quit whatever you're doing, whatever you've committed to doing this year. Hint, don't say I'll try, say I'll do. Yoda was right in that way. I think it's just the way we talk to ourselves is very important. And that's going to lead into what we're talking about today. All right, so good. All right, so I'm going to get rolling here. I'm going to lead us into the podcast, and then we're going to start. So here we go. Hey, I'm Nick from Defined Life, and you are listening to the Defining Life podcast, where our mission is to help you lead the life that you want through performing the daily actions that you need to do today to connect where you want to go in life. And so today we are going to talk about the story we tell ourselves. And this has come up through a couple of interactions that I've had over the past week, stemming directly from the Kobe Bryant situation. Kobe Bryant, passed away earlier this week in a helicopter crash. It also took his daughter and 2 other families and the pilot. Absolutely heartbreaking and tragic, shocking for a lot of people, for myself. I didn't really follow Kobe. I'm not a big basketball fan. Our house isn't a basketball house, but, we still felt it. And, reading the articles and seeing all the good stuff that he's done over the years, really impactful person, positive person on a lot of people, including his family. Big family guy, disciplined person, somebody that really decided what he wanted and went for it, right? From his discipline and how he led his teams to what he's doing afterward to this there's a children's podcast he was doing. So really it had a positive impact, and you can tell from the outpouring of support from people what he meant to a lot of people. On the flip side, there has been some negative stuff about his rape case that happened back in 2003. And my goal is not to get into that. But I think my goal here is to discuss how we interact with ourselves and with people who may do or have done bad things in our lives, and how we allow that to define us as people as we try to move forward. I don't know a lot about his case. I've read some pros and con articles about it just to kind of be aware of the subject. But I think the thing that hit me was that, there seems to be a feeling that we can't celebrate what this guy's done in his life because of this thing he's done in his past. Or he wasn't even convicted, but, this thing that people assume that was actually true that happened back then. And so, when taking his life as a whole, that is a big part of it, and it was terrible. I mean, that, anything like that is awful. I mean, rape, any kind of violence against women, violence against anybody is awful. And I'm not debating that, but there seems to be there's been issues where the Washington Post got on one of their reporters for even mentioning it. That person was compelled to mention it, and there's always this back and forth between people that want to forget it, and then there's the people that never want to forget it or want to make sure that nobody else forgets it and make sure it gets its fair share of the story. And so I started, like, we started having conversations about how does somebody get over something like that? You know, and what do we expect from people when they do anything bad? I mean, in Kobe's case, you know, whatever happened, how did we expect him to live the rest of his life? Was he just going to stop and always be trying to like be remorseful for it? Or at some point, should he have used his energy toward positive things, which it appears he did? And he tried to do a lot positive for his team, for his teammates, for his family, for his community. And so, like, he did, you know, over 15 years, did a lot of positive things. So how do we balance that out as a community, as people? And it's complicated. It's really complicated because it's easy for us to bucket people as good or bad. And it's hard for us to wrestle with gray area and realize that good people do bad things sometimes, and every once in a while, bad people do good things. But there's a lot of in between there. You know, the one story that comes to mind that we took a little heat for last year, I saw an article about Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, right? The college admission scandal. And, you know, wherever you fall on that case, your opinion, the article that I read was, you know, will they ever work again, or should they ever work again? And my question was, like, assuming they're found guilty and assuming they do whatever time is found necessary, you know, they have to go to jail, they pay fines, whatever they have to do, assume they do all of that. Should they be punished for their entire lives? Should they never work again because, while misguided, they wanted their kids to have a really good education, right? And I know what they did was wrong, and I'm sure they know what they did is wrong at this point. I would hope they do. But should they pay for it forever? Is there room for them to have jobs again, to work again, to live a life, and maybe even make up for what they've done wrong? You know, we love, man, we watch movies, and we love having a villain, and we love having a hero. And, you know, a lot of times the interesting part about a story is the redemption, the recovery, the you know, being in a bad place and realizing that you did something awful where you hurt people, and you use that and realize, like, if you can look at something awful you did and say, that's not me, I don't want to be defined by that, and you take it and you use it as motivation to grow into a much better person. Isn't that the story that we want? Isn't rising from the ashes the story that we want for people? And we don't necessarily have to forgive what they have done. But, you know, how do we handle when somebody completely turns it around? You know, and it can be the worst people in the world. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, a murderer convicted, life in prison should suddenly just be absolved of their sins, and not that we even have the power to do that. But how much is it worth if they realize how terrible they were and they become a minister, or they do what they need to do to educate kids so that they don't end up where they ended up? You know, and it can be any circumstance. I'm you know, being a little vague in this area, but, you know, I think across history you can see were awful people, or not even awful people, but people that did bad things turned it around. Andrew Carnegie is a big figure in Pittsburgh here. We have Carnegie Libraries. We have Carnegie Mellon University. The steel mills were a big employer here in Pittsburgh for a long time. And he's also important in New York. We know Carnegie Hall. He's a big name. If not the richest person in the world, one of the richest people in the world, right? And, he was notorious for having steel mills with terrible working conditions. Probably, and I think there was a Pinkerton situation by the steel mills. I mean, there are literally people died working for this man, and I'm pretty sure he didn't do his best to make sure that they had the best working conditions, And they say, and I believe this was in The Men Who Built America, it's a series, a History Channel series, that the turning point for him was the Johnstown flood. He was part of I believe it was the South Fork Fishing and Game, club, and they had the dam that burst and caused 22 people to die in Johnstown. And I believe it's in The Men Who Built America. They assert that that's what changed him. He realized his culpability in that situation. And nobody, I don't think, ever was punished for that. Like, it happened, and they all got off scot-free. But it was his culpability as being a member of that group and maybe part of the decision makers as how they handled the dam that changed how he handled the remainder of his life, donating a lot of his fortune to public services. And that's how we got the library system here in Pittsburgh. And, I think that none of that happens if he doesn't hold himself responsible for some of the things he did in his past. Now, does that erase his past? Absolutely not. But there's this life. I mean, it's just life where, we do things that we're ashamed of. And, bringing it home to myself in this Kobe Bryant situation, we were talking, my wife and I were talking about him in the kitchen, and, the rape case came up, and how he's handled things afterward, and how much of a role model he seems to be for people and a hero for people. And my wife was discussing, I just want to be normal. That's kind of how this came out. She said, I want to be normal. I wouldn't want to be like that in the limelight and like that, out there. And I got a little peek into a situation that, we've danced around for years. So you probably don't know, but my wife was teaching. She was a preschool teacher at Trinity Church, which is within a block of the World Trade Center. And at the time that the World Trade Center was occurring, she was teaching in that school. So the first plane hits, and she's in, they're accepting students into the classroom. And, by the time the second plane hits, they're told to evacuate. And they evacuate out into the street with these buildings on fire and just mass chaos. And, a lot of the parents had rushed back to grab their kids and get the heck out of there. Well, she was left with one child, and they carried this child along a route. And it's a longer story. Long story short, she ends up meeting the mother, blocks away, meeting the mother of this child on the street corner. In a city like that and that kind of chaos, the fact that this happened, kind of ridiculous. And so on the anniversary of this, I never even heard the story. She doesn't talk about it. I knew bits and pieces, but I never knew the entire detail. And somehow one of the local news stations heard about it. I don't know if one of her friends called or I don't remember how it came about, but the news station, the anchor came in and interviewed her in our house for about, a while, but it ended up being a 5-minute segment on the evening news, which is an eternity on the evening news. And, she talked about the whole thing. And at the very end, I'm going to get choked up here, but at the very end, the family did a pre-recorded video thanking her. And they had the daughter, and she's a teenager now. And it was like, thanks for everything you did and all that stuff, right? And so, she's not talked about it. And we've barely talked about it even since then, right? It's just not something she likes talking about. And my peek into her psyche, I think, and we still haven't really gone deep into this because it's not the most comfortable thing for her. But so we're talking about, like I said, and she's saying, I just want to be normal. I don't want to be a hero. And she's saying, but I even told her, I said, you are a hero. Like, you're every day to your kids and to that child in New York City. Like, you got her out of there, right? That's a big deal. There's a lot of people that would not do that. A lot of people that would just run for their lives. A lot of people that would pass her off to somebody else. And she said, but I did for a moment pass her off to somebody else. It was her and two other teachers. And she goes, for a moment, I had to take a rest. She was very heavy and I passed her off. And at that moment, I realized all of the doubt she was feeling going through that moment, all of those doubts and fears and everything that she was sort of ashamed of, maybe. I don't even know yet. Like, we still have to talk about this. This is going public and we still have to talk about it. But all of those things were overriding the action she actually took. So she's like, it almost seems like she's living this experience as somebody that had doubts and fears regardless of the outcome. And so it's been kind of defining her as she's going forward, and her not actually embracing the good thing that she's really done, right? And being this person that's done a really good thing in her life and a lot of good things afterward, I might say. And so, and I think that's not fair. It's not fair. It's not something that we should be like, and I know a lot of us go through that, where, we look at some people and we see the actions, positive or negative, that they do, like they perform, like they do these really good things or really bad things. And we don't have a view into their mind. The people doing bad things, we don't understand the pain and suffering they may have been through to cause them to do those bad things. But even the good people that do great things, we don't see their doubts and their fears and the things they had to overcome to do those great things. And when we do them, sometimes we overlook the great things we do every day because we have so many doubts and fears and we judgments on ourselves that we blow up into something that's disproportionate to what actually happened. And I look at my own life and I see it in my own life daily. I know the growth. Like, I know deep inside me the growth that's occurred within me in the past 5 years or even longer, right? I mean, I look at the person that I was 20 years ago, miserable, depressed, just angry and reactive and defensive and manipulative to a point, and like just could not have good relationships. And that person is still in me a little bit, like I sometimes find myself talking to people and I think to myself, I never thought I could have that conversation. I never could have seen, like, even looking at somebody, I could think to myself, I don't know that I have the confidence to talk to that person. But then when the conversation happens, it's not nearly as hard as it would have been 5 years ago. Because I'm much more comfortable in my own skin now. And I feel much more healthy up here than I ever did in my life. But those judgments are still there. The little piece of me, the doubts in my mind are still there. And even the labels are still there. You get labeled by certain people being a certain way. Unreliable, lazy, dishonest, angry, whatever somebody might be putting on you. If they know you that way, they're more comfortable with you being that way. So it's hard for them to imagine you growing out of that, And when you do grow out of it, it's not comfortable for them. They liked you the way you were, or at least they could bucket you that way. And so it's cool that you're, temperamental, because I know you as being temperamental. So if you stay temperamental, I know how to handle you or stay away from you. But come to me with kindness, sympathy, empathy, generosity, whatever you might be defining your life as now, I'm not going to know how to handle that. And maybe I don't like that. Maybe I like temperamental people. Maybe I like drama, And so that person's not going to know how to handle you. And the other thing is they want you to perpetually pay for your sins. If you've hurt somebody, if you've done something wrong, they want, like, they have this need to make you pay for that. And you don't want to have to keep paying for that. You want to grow. You want to be somebody that builds on this experience that you've had of doing something wrong, something you're ashamed of, something that you don't want to have to pay for the rest of your life. Judgment may come for you eventually, but right now, you do what you need to do to overcome it, to learn from it. Use it as motivation to become a completely different and better person, a bigger person. And that's, it's hard. I'm going through that now. It's hard because certain people know me as a certain person from 20 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever. Maybe even 1 year ago, right? And they can't allow for any type of change because I am defined for them as this person. And it's going to take a lot of proof to be different for that person, or I just find different people. Different people maybe I'm more compatible with. Friends, whoever, like business associates, whatever. You find the people you're more compatible with when you're authentic to yourself. A healthy, authentic self, and you find healthy, authentic relationships. But when you put yourself back in these positions where people are constantly trying to hold you accountable for this thing you did, even though you're trying to grow out of it, it's really difficult. And I even find myself going back into those situations. It's like there's this personality inside of me that's been locked away, right? I have all these positive influences around me. My relationship with my wife is better. I have people in our user group that are amazing inspirations for me, and business associates that are amazing. It's my life is completely different. But then I put myself back in these old familiar situations, and I can feel an old, immature, unhealthy personality want to come back out. Want to just come back out into the light and be like, hey, I'm still here. And, I have to have there's like a devil and an angel sort of thing on my shoulder going, that's not you anymore. So don't be there anymore. Don't be that person anymore. And, and it's not so much that I want to have something to prove, but just that, I have to own who I currently am. And it's a weird experience. And if you've ever gone to a high school reunion, you might have that experience. It's probably the most extreme, concrete, visible experience because, in high school for me, I was bullied. I didn't have many friends. I just did not fit in. I did not know how to relate to people. And I was really depressed. And when I go back to high school and I see the old familiar faces, they're different. I'm different. But yet all of those things come back. I see a bully. I see a jerk. I see somebody that was mean to me. They see that kid that they picked on, or that kid that, was weird in high school or whatever, right? Maybe it's still a little bit weird. I don't know. But it's hard to break out of those molds. And you have to decide moving forward whether you're going to care or not, right? You have to decide if you want to prove to somebody, if somebody's that important and they are healthy, that we have to prove to that person, I'm different now. I've grown. You will want me around. You will want a relationship with me because I can have a good relationship with you. But there's also those people that we created toxic relationships, right? So people that are compatible attract each other. So there's those people that we might have toxic relationships with that we just need to let go. Because there's no way to have a healthy relationship, because an unhealthy person making an unhealthy relationship with another unhealthy person, both people have to be healthy to have a healthy relationship. And so you have to decide, how much you're going to invest into that relationship. Now, you allow for their growth too, right? It's all fluid. It's all fluid, and it's crazy. It's the goofy experience of life, how fluid this all is. So, if somebody is static and unchanging, then, and we don't want a negative influence on our life, then we have to take ourselves out of that. Take ourselves out and put ourselves in a healthy place. And allow for them to actually do some changing on their own. Maybe they do change, and maybe they do come back a healthy person, and then we can evaluate whether we want to allow that person back into our lives. But you can't maintain a healthy relationship with an unhealthy person. And you can't keep throwing yourself into a relationship that you know is bad for you, especially if you're trying to get healthy. The saying that I always have in the back of my mind is, you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And, for me, that was some negative, some manipulative, awful people. And it's been my goal in creating the groups that we have for Define Life and Define My Day, for the people around me, to develop relationships with people that I feel good about, people that are healthy themselves and I can develop healthy relationships with. It's an absolute priority for me, day in and day out. It might not be written down anywhere, but I'm always kind of like, I know it. And I can sense, like you have a little bit of a radar. You can sense when somebody is healthy or unhealthy when you're talking with them, right? And I'm sure that when I was unhealthy, healthy people would see me and would back away. Unhealthy people would say, yeah, I can get along with that guy, because that's what they were compatible with. So now that I'm moving away from that, developing new relationships is a different experience. But I have to let myself, let myself be a different person. Part of doing this podcast and these videos is me proving to myself, I'm literally proving to myself in the moment that I can be a better, more positive, influential person. I mean, you're watching it right now or listening to it right now. And every day I am doing something. I am a person that helps other people live a life where they feel fulfilled and go to where they want to go. Because I don't want what happened to me to happen to anybody else. That's my mission, is to help people lead the life they want with no regret. A healthy life where where they're fulfilled. I don't want anybody to be as miserable, and for me, I was blind. And it's only by sometimes maybe dumb luck or being at the edge of the cliff and realizing that things needed to change. And I would rather help other people get to a point where they realize it before, they make permanent mistakes. So you're watching that with me. You're watching me trying to be that person. And I'm not trying. So, I use try. I'm not trying. I am being that person, right? So you're watching it here. So, my question to you is, what judgment, what story, what label are you living that is holding you back? And you can be anywhere in life. Maybe you've done some awful things to your kids. Maybe you've done some bad things in business. But you don't have to keep living that script. You don't have to keep living it because other people have labeled you a bad person or a dishonest person or even a shy person or a person that doesn't take initiative, disorganized. You don't have to live any of those labels. You can decide today to develop strategies to change that narrative. You don't have to suddenly be organized, but you can today say, I'm going to clean out one drawer. And I'm going to clean out one drawer every day for the next 30 days. And then after that, I'm going to organize the garage. Whatever it is. If being an honest business person is what you want to be, then maybe every day you read 30 minutes of a book about how to run a business in the right way. Or maybe you try to find a mentor that can help you navigate the business world in an honest way. If you want to be a better parent, you can decide today, I'm a better parent. You can decide it today and commit to something small. I'm going to spend 15 more minutes with my kid every day. I'm going to read a book 15 minutes every day. That can be the start. That's it. We don't have to burn out, be parent of the year, but we can change that script. Your employer-employee relationship. You can walk in tomorrow and be a different employee. Now, your boss knows how much history. How much history is of you being late, bad attitude, whatever. And it takes a lot of time to prove that you're not that person. And sometimes a change of scenery is just easier. You can walk in with a fresh personality somewhere else. But if you want to stay where you're at, you come in every day and you prove that you are a person with a positive attitude, a person that comes in on time, a person that does conscientious work. Maybe you even have a conversation. I'm changing it. I realize I've done things wrong and I'm changing it today. And then that person can help you along. But you can flip whatever script you're running right now. You have the capability to do it. I absolutely know it because I've done it myself. And we have big examples that we talked about earlier in this episode. Big examples of people that have awful things in their past and have the ability to turn it into something positive, to turn their lives into something positive, to have an impact, a positive impact on the people around them and the world in general. People are still benefiting from Andrew Carnegie's money 100 years later. And I guarantee people are still going to benefit from the work that Kobe Bryant has done in the past 15 years. He's been an inspiration to kids, adults, a lot of people. And it made the world a better place. So my message to you today is that you can overcome whatever BS script you're running right now. You just have to decide to do it. It's not easy, and you're going to have a lot of people pulling you back, but you can do it. All right, so I'm going to get into the comments here because I've seen a couple coming up. Let me see. Those are some of the earlier ones. Kristen, yeah, it is a tricky topic. It's hard because it's another person on the other end of the story whose voice was diminished. Kobe was never convicted, so therefore not guilty, and didn't need to make amends. And you're right, and I've thought about it, right? So I know there was a civil suit, and he did settle with her out of court, and she was 19. And God, I can't even imagine. Like, I've never been in a situation where I've been victimized like that. I don't even know anybody that I can think of that's been victimized like that, or at least that I'm aware of. And it's tough because that girl's life will never be the same, right? I'm sure it has never been the same. It's really hard. But at the same time, he can't just curl up and wither away, right? Like, he's got to do something positive. And I think that everybody is going to try to shirk responsibility. I mean, nobody wants to pay for their sins forever, right? And I think the difference is that the people that continue to do things, like, you can use Harvey Weinstein as an example. He's a guy that just perpetually, for years, systematically did awful things. I don't think that's something that's going to get turned around, right? But we look at this instance with Kobe. It was this is dangerous. I think he looked at that as like, if he truly did it and that's what happened, I think he looked at that as, and I'm guessing here, he looked at that as, you know what? That's not me. That's not me. That's not something I need to do better with my life. And I believe he dedicated to doing everything better in his life. And you look at the relationship he had with his wife and daughters. I mean, he was the family guy by, all examples that I've seen. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation. I feel for the victim in that situation. I feel for anybody that has to go through anything like that. Jana says, I thought the character development in Orange is the New Black was a perfect example of people are good and bad, selfish and selfless, seeing the timeline of people and life impact. My wife watched that. I never watched it. Maybe I will have to watch that show. She tried to get me to watch it, and I just wasn't in the mindset where I wanted to. So I might have to give that a shot. But yeah, it sounds like it's a great example. I mean, there's people that, people do bad things, and they can really, I mean, like, forgiveness and redemption are key stories in thousands of years of history with us. Kathy says, what you're saying right now about needing to find supportive people when you are displaying your authentic self is totally relatable at this point in my life. Kathy, I feel you. And I think we've actually even discussed this. I think I've seen you discuss it in the past in the group or in another video. That, it's a hard thing to find. And for myself, going through this process and starting this business and all of this, I had to pull away from a lot of people. I was sort of a hermit. And in fact, there's a lot of people that I miss that I've just started to see again that have been kind of like, where you been? Like, in fact, somebody texted me the other day, my New Year's resolution is to hang out with you one day this year. I mean, that's like, seriously, like I like, while I was sort of deconstructing myself over the past couple of years, I was kind of protecting myself and really only focusing on the relationships that were really important, namely my wife and kids and a couple of really close friends and family members. But I felt like I couldn't live with questions and judgment, and I had to kind of let myself transform a little bit in seclusion before I went back out into the world. Kristen, yeah, you're the average of the 5 people. That when I heard that, I started looking around. I heard it years ago, and I started looking around going, oh my God, that can't be true. Well, it was. Yeah, Kristen, thank you. I appreciate it. I know it's like, there's a conversation to have there, and it's really hard. And I know because there's so many people that feel so strongly about it. It's wading into that is difficult, and I'm glad you understood as I went through it. Yeah. Melinda, you're so right. The little steps purposely made toward become the big things. You have to give yourself time, grace, and show a bit of grit. Yeah, yeah. Grit is huge. Angela Duckworth's book Grit was a very big part of my transformation in discipline being a big part of our Define My Day process, and sticking things out, because I saw in myself how much I just didn't stick things out. I'd quit early and quit often, and it was a habit. And I could blame anything on that. I could blame I could blame ADD, depression, whatever I wanted to on it. But in reality, I just was in a bad habit of not seeing things through. And, this is another example of like, you got to kind of grit out that change in personality and prove to the people that you want to prove it to that you are making changes. And even in our relationship, my wife and I, our relationship, like, we have to prove every day that we are not who we were 5 or 10 years ago. And it's happening in both ways because, we're hardwired to think and to react in a certain way to even our relationship, through years of things between us and things that happened before we even met. And we're hardwired to react. And so you have to be a little vulnerable and allow for the other person to grow and learn. And they have to give you the same sort of grace. And it's hard. It's hard. And especially in our relationship, is that when one of us experiences some significant growth, but then when you do that, maybe you get a little overconfident and sometimes even judgmental, and then you like flip it and maybe one of you takes a step back, and then you're like, oh, see, you didn't change at all, and then like, no, that's not true. It's just a blip, right? It's just a blip. There actually is change happening here. We just have to allow for it and be a little patient. Tanya says another thing that's hard is when another thing that is hard is when you fall from the grace of people because of a short period of time. Oh yeah. Trying to regain the trust and your authentic person to those people is hard. Yeah. And that's exactly the thing. So it doesn't need to be something as extreme as what Kobe went through. I mean, you can go through a hard time and do some things that you're not proud of. You know, whether it's just talking to people in a disrespectful way or doing things to hurt other people. Maybe you're just sort of a little bit self-destructive and you do things that really hurt others. And, you know, you can apologize for that, but they're going to have a memory that you're a person that's capable of doing that. And so that trust has to be rebuilt. And, you know, it's hard. It's hard because you don't want to keep reliving that. You want to forget it. It's easier to forget it, right? It's easier to say, I'm not that person. I'm not that person anymore, and I will never do that again. But other people kind of, you know, keep you at arm's length a little bit. And it just has to be proven. Like, you can destroy trust really quick, and it takes a long time to rebuild it. In fact, I saw there's a cartoon we had hanging in our office about corporate trust and how, like, you know, a corporation builds trust over years, and it's like a forest, and they just, you know, the trees just grow and grow over time, and then one day the company does one thing to just cut down the entire forest. Like, they just destroy all trust because they did one thing. And they're like, and the CEO's going, okay, now how do we fix this? Well, you got to rebuild it again. It takes a long time to rebuild it. And it's the same thing with interpersonal relationships. Kim says, little steps are huge. Sometimes I have very small to-do tasks that seem overwhelming, but I put them as a priority and they just get done. Today was a huge one. Good for you, Kim. Good to hear. Yeah. And it happens, and it happens in amazing ways sometimes. Sometimes those little things that you can do every day, you know, as it builds up, it just has an amazing impact. And it's, you know, again, in the relationships, you can, if you feed little positives in a relationship every day, the next thing you know, you have this foundation of good stuff. You know, you have this foundation of good memories and good little moments. And the worst thing you can do is tear that down by doing something. But when you do, you have to realize that you just got to take the time again and build it up small little bits at a time. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that, but we have to. You know, if to get what we want, we have to be persistent and consistent. And in anything, relationships, work, learning, personal development, whatever it is, persistent and consistent constantly. That's persistent and consistent constantly. That's a little, yeah, I know, but okay, you know what I mean. All right, so that wraps it up for today. I appreciate everybody that was with me today. I hope this was valuable to you, and I appreciate you giving me some grace as I kind of wade through that topic. I know it's not easy, and you know, I appreciate you giving me some latitude there. I hope you guys have a great week. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and I will talk to you guys in the user group. I'll talk to you every morning. I'm there every morning live, talking about whatever is going on currently. This week, this Sunday, the topic is going to be, what was it? Oh, I can't remember. I'm blanking, but we have a really good topic that I grabbed from somebody else's post. They had a question, and so we're going to go forward with that topic on Sunday. But I'm there every morning every day in the morning, talking about whatever is currently going on. The podcast, the pre-recorded podcasts, get released Tuesday morning, and this live podcast will go up tonight. It gets uploaded to YouTube and will be up on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Google Play also tonight. So I appreciate you being with me here. getting tongue-tied. I appreciate you being here with me. Remember to take the small steps today that lead you to where you want to go in life and create that defined life for yourself. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.